Hello everyone, and welcome to Arcanum Uncovered. Today we're going to go into one of my more aluminum. Today we're going to go into one of my more aluminum hat style theories. And considering what I've already covered, that's probably saying a lot. I'll get right to the crux of it though. No point in bearing the lead. Gemhearts are spikes being used to create natural hemalurgic creations. The Spren and type of Gemheart determine the creature that you get. I think most of Roshar's native creatures come from this, but we are going to specifically be covering the Great Shells and the Singers. Yes, that's right, the Singers. There are a few different kinds of Great Shells: Chasmfiends, Lancerin, Taina, Unerigs, and Santhids. Not enough at all is known about the Unerigs, Taina, or Lancerins, so we're going to focus on the ones we do have information about. Now, very little is known about Santhids, including if they even have a Gemheart, but I do want to touch on them briefly. Due to their size, it is assumed that they have a Gemheart and Spren. Mandras or Lux Spren are observed by Shallan near them, and their anatomy indicates Gemhearts. The interesting part is that we do know due to a WOB, linked below, that they have some degree of Sapience, and it's easier for this to happen specifically on Roshar due to Cultivation's influence. And no, don't worry, this isn't a Cultivation is behind everything video this time. Now, going on to the Great Shell, we do know information about. Chasmfiends are a massive creature that are hunted because of their, you guessed it, Gemheart. And we know two things about this Gemheart that is always true. It's always an emerald, and it always has a mandra inside of it. Now, there are some Great Shells that will have varying pole stones inside of them, but with Chasmfiends, it is always an emerald. We have also only seen them in the late stages of their life cycle, so although it's assumed they lay eggs, we don't actually have confirmation on how one is born. What if their process is actually similar to Kolos for their birth, only less messy and more geological? Rock monsters are not unheard of on Roshar after all, and although not hemalurgic in nature, thunderclasts do exist, animating what was initially inanimate. What if Chasmfiends are a take on this process similar to hemalurgy? Now, before going any further, I do think it's important to cover two things. First off, how is a Gemheart made? It's a natural process from drinking unfiltered water on Roshar. Rosharan water is filled with Crem that will crystallize in your body and give you the nutrients to make Gemhearts. Because of this, it is also still possible that Chasmfiends do just lay eggs, and the natural water that they absorb when they're young creates that Gemheart, prepping them for when they're too large for their own body to carry. The other thing I need to clarify is I keep saying hemalurgy, but I do believe that this process is a little different on Roshar. Not that it can't be done by a hemalurgic spike, but I think the Gemhearts and Spren allow for a less messy, more controlled version of it. Hemalurgy, as we know it on schedule, is done by driving a spike through a person, stealing their investiture, and driving that spike through another person or thing, in turn giving it the stolen investiture. On Roshar, I believe it's done naturally using Gemhearts, which creates a sort of hemalurgic spike that's fueled by your own blood instead of someone else's. It also uses massive amounts of investiture and a Spren. I imagine some of you are starting to understand where I'm going with this. That massive amount of investiture is a Highstorm, and per WOB, we know that Highstorms are integral to the magic system and that they existed pre-Shattering, along with Spren, which also existed pre-Shattering. Now, this could just be a way for refilling investiture, but I believe it is also tied to the Crem dropped during that storm. And this transitions right into our next type of hemalurgic creature on Roshar, the Parshendi. Have you ever wondered why the listeners are so protective of their dead? Why they'll go so far as to lose battles when people are touching them? Why do they consider their Gemheart so sacred and personal? What if a Gemheart is literally storing a part of their soul inside of them? Instead of one spike entering another subject and ripping a part of their soul out, what if the Gemhearts are growing inside of them and slowly sapping out a part of their soul as they grow? Let me draw some parallels. The listener's transformation requires intent. Spiking requires intent. The type of Spren used affects the transformation, just like the type of metal affects the power given. Listeners change appearance based on the form they're in, just like how spikes will affect the physical form of whatever they're inserted into. The listeners and their interactions with Roshar is a self-contained hemalurgic system where all it requires is a Spren to be trapped inside of their Gemheart to act as the investiture, instead of the sacrifice of a flesh and blood being. What's more, this is probably completely lossless. Hemalurgy, when used, always has a loss of power. However, I believe this power, considering it's happening completely within the biological being, and there is no transfer of power seen, is completely lossless. This would also explain a lot of Roshar's history as well. The Highstorms have always been on Roshar, and the Dawnsingers were created by Adonausium. We also know from a WOB that the original Spren are tiny splinters of Adonausium. Adonausium set up the entire planet to be self-sufficient through the use of Spren, Highstorms, and Gemhearts. This may be how Hemalurgy is actually supposed to work, what Ruin's art is based on. A completely lossless transfer of investiture to give power and sustain a planet. Not the sloppy version we see on Scadrial where people's spirit webs are disfigured and there's a loss of power. What do you think though? Is this a Rosharan clean version of Hemalurgy? Or is it something completely different? Let me know down below, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe and join us next time so that we can all become a little more quantifiably invested.